Have you with us on this busy day? Talked about what's going on as far as the world of sports is concerned. As we chat, we'll do the NBA, NHL, things along those lines. That a little bit later on. AT&T is the place today for this draft. 3 days. They've sold 1 million tickets. This has become a huge event. It always was, it always had, give ESPN credit. They sort of made this a huge deal. Radio City and Madison Square Garden had something to do with it too in the 90s, and this has become just it's like a mid-season Super Bowl. It's everybody is on top of it. It was a good move by the NFL Network is now in the mix too. So you got the 3 or 4 people. It's really just a huge day. Now I never really have been that into it, but I have been forced to in the last whatever it might be 7, 8, 9 years. Here's Peter King. Let's get some thoughts on some teams. I know he's busy. It's a busy day for Pete, so he's nice enough to give us a couple minutes. We'll get a thought on some teams. Peter, well done. How are you today, pal? Okay.
Everything's going okay, Chris. You?
Not bad. Nice to have you with us. All right, I know you got to run, so I'll make it quick. How many teams right now you think feverishly are working up to trade with somebody in the top 5 to get a QB?
Buffalo and Arizona. I don't know how feverish they are. I don't think Miami is being as aggressive as those other 2 teams are, but I think if only one team gets up, it'll be Buffalo. If it's 2, it'll be Buffalo and Arizona.
All right. Now, is Buffalo trying to move up in the draft for a specific player, or is Buffalo okay with any of the...
I'm sure they are, Chris. I don't know who it is. I've thought all along it was Josh Allen, and I think they're going to have a chance to move up and get Josh Allen because I think the first 2 quarterbacks who are going to be gone at 1 and 3 are going to end up being Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. That's just my guess. And so if that happens, then it looks like Josh Allen, the kid from Wyoming, is going to be available. I don't know. I think Cleveland would be very happy to go down from number 4 to Buffalo at number 12 for a ransom. So that's probably, I think, Cleveland at 4 or Denver at 5 are probably the most likely places for Buffalo to run up to get their guy.
All right, now everybody seems to think in the last 5-6 hours that Mayfield is the Browns flavor and the number 1 selection. You buying that? Is this just a lot of draft day fodder? What's your take on Mayfield now maybe being the top pick?
I am buying it, Chris. I think it sounds like both the ESPN people and some other people are on that bandwagon. And the reason it makes a lot of sense, I think, is that John Dorsey, the GM of the Browns, was never going to let this out until they were absolutely sure as a team, as an organization, what they were going to do. And the fact that it's getting out in a few places now leads me to believe that if you're not going to trade the pick, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to hold on to the privacy of it, like it's some sort of immense secret. If you're not going to make a trade, it doesn't really make that much sense to be so secretive anymore.
All right. Does this mean that the Jets are happy about this? Sounds like maybe they wanted him at 3, or they delighted.
Yes, there were people in that building, Chris, who really wanted Baker Mayfield, and there's no question about that. But the fact is that the Jets clearly came up to number 3 knowing that they might not get their number 1 choice, but they were okay with that because they had 2 or 3 quarterbacks that they liked,
right,
and they would have been fine with. So I don't think this is going to be a heartbreak for the Jets.
All right, now is there do the Giants like any? The Mayfield's not a Giant type of quarterback, so I don't think they were going to have any interest with him anyway.
Giants like Sam Darnold, Chris, and I think it's going to be an interesting question. I think they probably take Saquon Barkley, but it won't shock me if they go with Sam Darnold, which then would, I think, kind of confound the Jets. I've thought all along that the Jets were going to be a Mayfield or Darnold team, And now if they have to go to their third quarterback, my guess is that would be Rosen.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I don't think the Giants are taking Donald. I think they're going to take Barkley. I'm with you 1,000% on that. How come Miami, they still believe in Tannehill? How come Miami's not being a little bit more aggressive to get into the mix to get one of these top 4 quarterbacks?
Because I think a couple of things. In the middle of the 2016 season, when Adam Gase was in his first year in Miami, Tannehill was playing good but not great football. And I think at that point, the Dolphins felt like, this guy's got a good chance to be our quarterback of the future. He might not be great, and he never really has played consistently at a high level.
No, he has not.
But I think the Dolphins right now, Chris, are a little hesitant to cast their lot with one of these guys who they really might not love. And to get up from, say, 11-4 is going to cost you next year's one and something else. Do you really want to do that if you're not really convinced about these quarterbacks to begin with? So I think that has a lot to do with where the Dolphins' heads are right now.
I agree. It's a fair point, but the problem is I'm not sure if Tannehill's the answer either. All right, how about?
I don't think they know that either. And he's missed 19 games in a row with injury. So I agree. I think this is a risky thing to let these quarterbacks pass. Then again, I think it would also be a risky thing to take a quarterback you don't love.
Right. They're in a very tricky spot. Lamar Jackson, yeah. Peter, everybody's got him going to the Ravens middle of that first round. How about Lamar Jackson right now?
I don't see the Ravens taking him, Chris. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I think the Ravens are more likely to take a position player and to give Joe Flacco one more year and one more shot at, sort of returning to his levels of, 5 years ago. But I would say this about Lamar Jackson. I think, he's going to be sort of a flashpoint guy because you're probably going to have to do a lot of different things in your offense than you normally would do because he's obviously not your classic drop-back quarterback. But in my opinion, good coaches adjust to players, and he's obviously a good player. I think he'll go before the end of the first round, but I don't really know who right now. I thought the Bengals last week. I gave him to the Bengals in my mock draft, and there was a big reason for that. But now I'm hearing that Mike Brown, the owner of the Bengals, will not take him. So I don't know where he'll go. I think it's possible that a team high in the second round trades up, to get him low in the first round. That's sort of my operating theory right now with Lamar Jackson.
Will Bill Belichick get a quarterback this weekend?
I will not be surprised if the Patriots don't pick a quarterback in this draft. And the reason is that I think the Patriots, you've heard all sorts of rumors about who they like, and I do think they like Lamar Jackson some. No question about it. But I think the biggest problem right now is that the Patriots don't want to use one of those. They got 4 picks. They got 2 1s and 2 2s for the first time since 1998. And they've got so many holes to fill on that roster. They don't want to use one of those picks, even a third-round pick. They don't want to use on a quarterback that they really don't believe in. And I just think it sounds to me that the Patriots don't have a belief in any of those second-round type guys. Now, I think the Patriots are at 43 in the second round. If for some reason Lamar Jackson got down to them there, I think they would probably take him from the sound of what Lamar Jackson was saying and how interested the Patriots are. But I doubt that they would do that in the first round. That's just my gut feeling.
All right. Was it you that Sean Payton said he doesn't like any of these 4 quarterbacks as franchise guys?
Yeah.
Fill me in on that.
If he had to guess, he said if he had to guess at one of these players being a success in 4 or 5 years, he would guess Darnold, but he wasn't in love with any of them.
Really? Does that have any weight? Now, he's a guy that knows quarterbacks. He's got a Hall of Famer there. Does that carry any weight with some of these other franchises, what Sean Payton said?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not saying that people don't listen to him, but I'm saying that I think people do their own evaluating. So I'm not sure that people listen to that and say, wow, we better go back and look at these guys again.
Does Josh Allen's tweet, some high school that Yahoo came up with, is that going to affect him tonight?
I wouldn't think so, but I'm sure that whoever is interested in asking him, or whoever's interested in drafting him, is certainly going to ask him about it before the draft. And you know, it's concerning, but I don't think it's one of those things that's going to lead to him sinking like a stone in this draft. I think he'll probably still go where he was going to go.
Is Barkley pound for pound the best player, Pete?
I think a lot of people, a lot of scouts would say that, but I think there are also a lot of people who say that that Quentin Nelson, you know, could go to 10 straight Pro Bowls, and you can't say that about many people coming into the draft. So this is just a gut feeling, Chris, but I think that as far as a skill player, there's nobody close to Barkley in this draft, just pound for pound. But I also think that people like Nelson, and they really like Bradley Chubb as a pass rusher.
Right. Now, why have the Browns leaned towards Mayfield? What in your eyes has occurred in the last, say, couple days to make us think that he is their favorite choice? Let me hear the reason for that.
Well, I don't think anything has happened in the last couple of days, except maybe that that the Browns have essentially started to feel like we're not going to trade this pick, so we're not necessarily going to keep it under the kind of wraps that we that it had been in. But if you ask me why I think they like him, I think they want to have a quarterback who's got a little chip on his shoulder. They want to have a quarterback who they feel is a hugely competitive guy who can right now say, I am going to turn around the Cleveland Browns, and I'm confident that I'm going to do it. Chris, this guy walked on at Oklahoma. I mean, you know, he has really made a lot more of his life and his career than the quarterbacks who were born with a silver spoon in their mouths. And so I think most people, when they look at this guy, they look at a guy who says, hey, listen, the Cleveland Browns have lost forever. I've been there before. I've been a nobody, so this doesn't bother me.
Well, I hope go ahead.
No, and I was just going to say, I'm not saying they're right, because I'm saying every one of these quarterbacks has flaws. But I think that Mayfield's got a chance. Now, whatever that means, I don't know. But I definitely think he has a chance to be good.
I hope they watch that second half of that Georgia game.
I mean, that was – hey, you know what, Chris? You're right. He needed to play well in that game. And
he stunk in the second half. He stunk in that second half.
I mean, that's the biggest game
that he's ever played. Not even close.
Stage.
Yep.
That definitely hurts him, no question about it.
Yeah, it bothers me. Who's the is there a player that's going down that's going to be sitting there late at night bothered? And is there a player rising that I'm not aware of who's all of a sudden going to be a top 7, top 8 pick?
Well, I don't think that there's going to be any unknowns who are going to get into the top 7 or 8. I think the player who could fall is Josh Rosen. Now, I'm not saying he will, and I still think he could go as high as number 3. But teams seem to be concerned about Rosen and his relationship with teammates and things like that. So I think there's a chance that Rosen slips. And as far as a guy moving up or a guy who you might not think he'd go this high, I mean, the guy who I believe is, has got a chance to go higher than anybody thinks. And because I think Roquan Smith, the linebacker from Georgia, is probably going to go, if Indianapolis sits at 6, and he's got a very good chance to go there. But I also think that it's really, really interesting to watch this kid Marcus Davenport from Texas San Antonio. Hard to imagine that he would go in the top 10, but I think he's got a chance to go right around 10 or 12.
He's a defensive end there. All right. Which organization, Reed GM, outside of Dorsey, we're going to put Dorsey aside, he just got there, which organization in your eyes is under the most pressure tonight to get this right?
My thought would be the Jets and Mike McCagnon, because look, this is we all see what's going on here. The Jets have been angling to get a really good quarterback in the draft for the last couple of years, since they had to settle for Christian Hackenberg 2 years ago. So that obviously was a colossal failure. And McCagnon really stuck up for Christian Hackenberg. Not a smart idea. So right now, when I look at the New York Jets, I say, this is it. This is your chance, Mike McCagnon. If you want to be employed a year from now, you better hit on this quarterback. And that quarterback better at least have some success in year one. And if he doesn't, I think obviously both Bowles and McCagnon are going to be in danger.
Now, where is Dez Bryant going to end up, Peter?
I don't know. I think he's going to end up somewhere. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to Seattle. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes for very reasonable money to the Rams. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to Washington. I don't see him on the Giants. I don't see him on Philly. An outside chance he'd go to the Patriots. But I think the Patriots are really happy right now with Jordan Matthews. He was the guy who was on the Eagles for a couple of years and went to Buffalo. And the Patriots, I think, are really going to optimize Jordan Matthews. So I don't think they'd be interested. But, it's weird with Dez Bryant, Chris. He very much overvalued his presence and his lot in life. So in my opinion, when I look at him, I say, you better be reasonable in what you're thinking and in what you're asking for, because I just don't really think people value him as a no-doubt top receiver anymore.
Now, last thing, Pete, what do you think Pete Rozelle is thinking about today? I mean, in the old days, he couldn't believe ESPN wanted to televise this thing, yeah. and now you got every TV show, every radio show in America spending a good part of the weekday, whatever, on the NFL draft. I mean, they're gonna get 18 million people watching this game tonight. Nobody knows the Celtics Bucks are on. Forget baseball, forget the hockey. I mean, I'm not sure about tomorrow now, but at least for this first round and this perfect storm that has developed with the Giants and Jets early, a lot of quarterbacks, Dallas, Texas, whatever. I can't recall a draft with this much juice as we get ready here on the third Thursday in April. How about that for a sec?
It's pretty incredible, Chris. And I think one of the things about what's happened is that the NFL has set up a system whereby they hype this draft basically for 5 or 6 weeks. And just think of this, Chris. In the old days, when I first started to cover football, the draft was not even remotely an event. You're right. It wasn't on television. No one really cared about it all that much. And so right now, here's what the difference is. You've got full-time people in the media doing nothing for the last 3 months, but writing about free agency in the draft, broadcasting about free agency in the draft. And the draft basically has gotten free publicity from people in the media for 3 straight months. And that's what happens year after year after year. Chris, when I started out in this job, my first year I covered the Bengals in Cincinnati. And in the off season, I covered the Reds part-time, and then at the end of the football season, I covered college basketball. I moved to Newsday. I covered a bunch of hockey after the Giants season was over, when I was covering the Giants and writing an NFL column. It's just, life has changed to the point where now the NFL is a full-time 12-month-a-year gig for about 8 times the number of people who covered it 25 years ago. That's why the draft becomes this must-see TV thing.
Well, I'll tell you, Pete, when it was on Saturday mornings, I did 10-1 over at the garden there, that little Felt Forum, Madison Square Garden Theater. We did it 10-1, and the draft started at noon on Saturday. So I would be off the air at about 12:50 for some dopey Met pregame show after about 3 picks in the first round. That was for about 10 years. And
that was it.
That was it. Maybe we get the update on. We'll give you who the picks were. Now look at it, for crying out loud. You got 5 straight hours of coverage. I got a child who's a Jacksonville Jaguar fan. And for Colin Russo, who has struggled with his health, Lyme disease, he's had a stress fracture. The poor kid's been a disaster. Plus, he had that Jaguar loss to New England, which was the worst loss of all time, Pete. Make him happy. He's probably got the radio on right now. Who are the Jaguars going to take at pick 29? How about that? Let me hear.
Oh, my God. Who knows? I have no clue. But the one thing I would say about the Jaguars, for the first time in a long time, the draft isn't uber important, you know. The draft becomes a supplement to building your team. In my opinion, I think if I were the Jaguars, I'd be thrilled if Calvin Ridley from Alabama was sitting there and I could take a receiver to replace Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns.
Good point, Peter. Excellent. As usual, we love you. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for a few minutes here today.
Thanks, Chris. See ya.
Take care. Peter King, great job there with the update. Right to the calls. 9 lines, give you a chance. Scott in Tampa says,